Welcome to Planning Committee B for May this time round. For those who are joining us at the back, just a bit of housekeeping in terms of turning off any phones or putting them on silent. And if there's a fire alarm, please just follow us on the way down. There's also toilets to the back there. We'll take breaks in between items every kind of hour or so that people can go if they need to. And when you come to speak, if you are speaking, can you just make sure that you press the microphone button, the green light will come on, but I'll give you advice when you come up in regards to doing that. We'll move on swiftly. We've got Gareth Arnold joining me as development manager, Jane Miller as the democracy officer, and Sandra Bradley as the solicitor for the council. And we'll move into declarations of interest as item 1. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? Councillor Vassie, please.
My partner works at St Paul's Nursery, so I'll take myself to the naughty corner or wherever I have to go.
Okay, no problem. So you just need, are you going to step off for that one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other declarations? No. Okay. So we'll move on to item 2, which is the minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes that were published from the last meeting? No. Okay, we'll take those as being approved and move forward. And item 3 is general public participation, of which we have none. So we'll swiftly move on to the first item, which is item 4A, land bounding St Paul's Mews. First of all, I'll ask Gareth to take us through the presentation, and then I'll ask the speakers to come up after that. So if you could start with that, please, Gareth.
So thank you, Chair. Members will recall that planning permission was granted for park redevelopment of the St Paul's Nursery at an earlier Planning Committee B. This application seeks a temporary 1-year use of land, an area known as, it's an open space, area of open space, land known as Holgate Dock, as a construction compound. So this drawing shows the relationship between St Paul's Nursery, the top, Holgate Dock, and then this contractor's compound here. So it's as it's set out in the report, there's insufficient room on the site of St Paul's Nursery for a construction compound to store and take deliveries. So this this proposal has been put forward. Similarly used when St Paul's Primary School was undertaking some construction work previously. So the compound, I'll show you the photographs. So there's a site, it's got a nice tree belt to the south, and then some newly planted trees around the edge. From ground level and ground level again. It's proposed, as I said, as a drop-off for materials and deliveries, and then those materials will be transported to the work site via smaller vehicles, and no welfare facilities will be provided on the site. So it's purely about collection, and then onward dispatch to the site itself. There'll be tree protection fencing. The site's been amended following the submission of a tree survey setting out the crown spreads of the trees, and then there will be grass protection matting. There is an update in front of you. We've done a bit of splitting up of the conditions. So originally, condition 1 was about the duration of the use, and then the reinstatement of the site. So we've just taken out reference to the reinstatement of the site from condition 1 and set it as a 12 months from the setting out of the land as a construction compound. And then condition 4, we've combined the requirement to reinstate the land with a scheme that's required to be submitted, including details of any reseeding, reinstatement of planted wildflower areas, and the improvement of compacted soil. And then there's a third and additional condition, which is about measures to prevent the egress of mud, water, and other material onto the public highway. Because the site has this grass protection matting, shouldn't be an issue, but it's just in case. And that's the end of the presentation. And oh no, there you go. Sorry, there's that's the tree protection, the extent of the tree protection fencing there, showing it clear of the root protection areas and the crown spreads of the trees, except for this one at the right at the entrance to the site, which needs to be pruned to allow the fencing to be installed. So that would be that tree there. And that's the end of the presentation.
Thanks. Does anyone not looking for questions in general, just asking if there are any questions on the plans at this time? Yeah, Councillor Melly, I'll come to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. On that area plan of the kind of surrounding area, and it showed where this compound is and where the, yeah, that one. Could you show us what the route is, please, from the compound to the nursery for things like construction traffic and delivery of materials and that sort of thing?
It's not specified, but to be on in any of the as far as I'm aware, but my understanding it would be Watson Terrace and St Paul's Square. There is an entrance to the rear of St Paul's Nursery, but that's not sufficient to take construction sized vehicles.
Councillor Waters, please.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the tree protection measures, the council's tree officer on the planning file asked a very pertinent question. I hope this will be supervised. How will it all be supervised, and what penalties will there be for any damage to trees? Bearing in mind it's a City of York Council application and we can't really enforce anything.
Set out in condition 3 is the regular inspections during the development as per the approved document. So that's conditioning the submitted tree protection plan and the method statement.
But unfortunately, that's only once every 4 weeks, according to the tree survey and the independent tree report. So there's a lot of damage can happen in the space of 4 weeks.
It's what's considered to be reasonable in the circumstances. It's not a scheme that would, I don't think it's a scheme that would justify any greater level of supervision than what's set out, and that's been accepted by the landscape architect, who said that the management strategy is comprehensive and acceptable.
Can't see any other hands this time. So we'll move on to public speakers. We have one public speaker today, which is Jessica Loveland, speaking in objection. If you'd like to come up, please, Jessica. You've got 3 minutes to talk. Just when you're ready. Okay, good. Perfect, thank you. But when you're ready, just make sure that the microphone button is showing green on the speaker, and I'll start timing from when you start talking.
the mic on? Yes, okay, thank you. Good afternoon all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to start by addressing the significant amenity value of Holgate Dock. This space is a vital haven for recreation and nature, bringing benefit to not only the students at St Paul's Primary, but also the children living in the council-owned accommodation on Cecilia Place. There are 7 children under 12 living there. They have no gardens and they have no alternative play areas. Many children play in the dock unsupervised. However, it's unlikely parents will let their children play in a space where heavy vehicles are operating. Our community has already endured similar disruptions. Whilst renovation works were happening at St Paul's Primary in 2020, a container, skip and construction personnel took over a section of the dock for a whole summer and autumn period. The community was not consulted and the site sat unused for many weeks following completion of works, and it took local people ringing the council and the school to ultimately get it removed. This smaller compound caused significant damage to the landscape and no restoration attempt was attempted. It's taken years to show signs of recovery and it's still not back to its former condition. This experience has left us with a real concern about the long-term degradation of our communal spaces and the lack of trust in promises to respect our green environment. It seems that this earlier use has also set a precedent for the land being repurposed in this way, despite never being officially consulted upon. We have concerns about the monitoring and enforcement of the recommended protective measures. The plan specifies site monitoring visits every 4 weeks, which will not be sufficient to prevent or swiftly address violations of the protocols. We would like to advocate for increased monitoring frequency and a clear funded plan for immediate restoration post-construction. The lack of a completed vehicle swept path analysis raises doubts about the safety and the feasibility of manoeuvring heavy construction vehicles in an area already constrained by narrow streets and with very limited parking. My father, who also lives on Watson Street, is a blue badge holder, yet he struggles to find parking close to his home, and it remains unclear where contractors will park their vehicles as well. While the remainder of the dock is promised to remain accessible, the reality of living next to a construction zone will deter its use and impact quality of life for residents. When last used as a construction compound, fewer people used the space, and there was a marked increase in antisocial behaviour in the dock after dark. While we understand the necessity of refurbishing St Paul's Nursery, it should not come at the cost of our community's well-being and access to public green space. This plan sets a concerning precedent for the future allocation of our communal spaces at odds with the principles of sustainable urban development, community welfare, and public health. We urge the council to reconsider the use of Holgate Dock for such purposes, or at the very least, provide a detailed and actionable plan to minimise the impact on our community, whose voice appears to have been sidelined in the endeavour to make this plan feasible. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you. We just ask you to stay seated for 1 second. Is there any questions for this week? That's okay. Well, if you want to take a seat at the back.
Will I have a
Thank you for
chance to ask a
talking.
question about alternative
Sorry,
locations?
no, we can't. It'd have to be submitted in advance, sorry, which is unfortunately the rules. That always seems a bit unfair.
I wasn't
but
told I had to submit any questions to the panel in advance.
It's sorry, again. Councillor Walton.
I've just got a question for the speaker. Are you aware of any consideration of alternative locations for this?
No, I haven't heard of any.
Um,
That's what I was wanting to ask actually, because I have a recommendation, if people would like to hear it, that I think would be more appropriate.
Well, that was the question I was asking you, if you've got any more appropriate
Yeah.
locations in
There's
mind.
some private space. It's held by a landlord, but it's always empty. Holgate Townhouse Apartments. It's closer to the nursery school. I'm sure that if you approach the landlord, he would entertain the idea of hosting the site there. It's basically concrete with some scrubby grass. I'm sure he would rent it to the council for the proposed period, and it would cause a lot less disruption to our neighbourhood again.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Clark.
That's just to supplement to that, whether we could see that on the plan, where that area is.
Yeah.
Is that possible, please,
Yeah,
Gareth?
you've got a pointer.
You don't know where it is, okay.
No,
No, I don't know where it is.
I can point it out to you.
Question.
Well, actually, Chair, the application we're considering is the application that's on the screen, not an alternative
Yeah.
application that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, essentially, we can only consider the application that's in front of us, so we
Okay,
can't.
I was
take
just
into
putting it
account
out there
that.
as a recommendation for an
it's
alternative,
welcome.
should it
Yeah.
be of interest.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Does anyone have any further questions for officers? Following that, Councillor Fenton, please.
Thank you. So in terms of the continued use of the dock whilst the compound is on site, will that require the creation of a new access gate? Or is there already an existing access gate that
There is
will continue to be used so that people can still access the site?
there is a second gate. You just pick it out behind that white car. Big photograph, you know. No, you can't pick it out. It's definitely there. I believe it seemed to be locked when I visited, but there is a second access.
Yeah, Councillor Fenton again.
So is that gate, is there a section of footpaths that someone could access that gate through? I'm just thinking there seems to be a lot of parked cars there, some of which appear to be half on the footpath, half on the road. So has there been any consideration to a temporary traffic restriction order to ensure that what would be the sole access point could be retained and not obstructed by traffic? Because if it's used by young families, there may be pushchairs and trikes and whatever.
No,
Okay.
it's not a request that we've received from our highways team to facilitate that. The footpath does go down to the gates, and then it becomes a service margin beyond it. You see there's I think that gives a vehicle access down to the railway line there. Yes, difficult when people choose to park on the pavement. If because there's no WL lines there, they're not doing anything that the council could do as a civil enforcement. It would have to be the police enforcing an obstruction to the pavement, I guess.
Councillor Melly.
Going back to that picture that you showed just now with the current site access, is that tactile paving?
That's at the raised crossing point.
Is that where the vehicle access to this site would be if this was approved?
Yes.
So are there any proposed changes to that if that's
No.
becoming a vehicle access rather than
No changes to that.
you wouldn't usually have vehicles crossing tactile paving, would you?
It's a temporary use. I would assume they would have managed. They will manage it as a construction compound site. Whether it's allowed or not under highway regulations, I've not been notified by the highways team that that's an issue that they had.
Okay. Sorry, that was a supplementary, but the question I actually had my hand up to ask was about how much this site has been used as a construction site in the past, because it seems like it's supposed to be outdoor amenity space, but the idea behind this application is that it's an unusual change of use and only temporary. So I was just wondering how much it's been used for this use in the past.
I'm only aware of that one
Okay.
time that it's mentioned in the report. I've not been made aware of other times it's been used.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
It's unusual. Sorry, it's an unusual situation because it's normally contractors, developers wouldn't choose an area of land away from their development sites, and the general permitted development order gives permitted development rights to use adjacent land as a construction compound during the duration of works. Because this isn't adjacent, by by the definition in the order. That's why this one needs planning permission, whereas you very rarely see this type of application coming forward because it's an unusual circumstance.
Councillor Manning.
Thank you, Chair. How will the edge of the area that would be construction compound be delineated from the rest of the outdoor space? Is it going to be enclosed with fencing or something?
Yeah, so it's tree protection fencing, which is it tends to be a bit stronger than Harris fencing, to prevent vehicles hitting the fence and the fence then going over into the route protection zone. So it's held up by a sort of a buttress type feature.
Okay. So there can't be any kind of encroachment into the open space that doesn't have permission?
No, the permission is delineated on this drawing, which is within the approved drawings. So yeah, it should be set out and it will be inspected once it's set out.
Yeah, but I imagine most people using the compound won't be accessing the planning documents. They'll be turning up to make deliveries and will need it delineated there on the site where they can manoeuvre a vehicle or make deliveries and where they can't.
Yeah, that's I think because of where it sits with the entrance gates, it's quite limited, and the fact that there are trees around it is quite limited in you're constrained by the fencing and the you're constrained into that area by the fencing. I don't think there's much of an opportunity to spread out.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Fenton, please.
So mention was made of when this site was used for as a compound when the primary school was refurbished. Was that compound in a similar place?
I believe so.
Okay,
But I don't know, so but I believe so.
and just on that map, there's two boxes in the footpath, which I think say tactile.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is some tactile paving.
Yeah.
Presumably that's where the secondary access point is. But obviously that tactile paving section isn't protected by double yellow lines, whereas the one further up is, as we've seen from the map.
Yes.
That's why I just wanted to check what that said.
I think yeah, it doesn't help. I would say the other entrance is there, so it's slightly off the tactile. I think that's just a crossing point rather than a denotation of the entrance to the open space. I think that's the same for this one as well. It just so happens that it's next to the gates. The reason for that tactile is to lead to a dropped crossing point. Well, it's a table there, but it's dropped crossing point there.
Can't see any other questions at this time, so moving to discussion. There's already been a couple of bits that have been picked up that might want to be added in. Councillor Waters, start us off there, please.
Well, I'd just like to move a deferral pending full consideration of alternative, less environmentally destructive sites, as we've just recently heard, and unfortunately, I don't see that there's anybody here from the council to expand on our knowledge of that site. And I think as a planning committee, we've got a duty to investigate if there is a less environmentally destructive alternative.
Councillor Fenton, please.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with what's being proposed in terms of the mitigation measures to protect the trees. I am concerned about continued access to the site through the secondary gate. I know that you can't just put double yellow lines down without going through a very lengthy and legal process. So I'm not going to suggest that as a condition. Plus, it may also exacerbate an existing pressure on parking spaces. What I think would work, and I think could reasonably be conditioned, is you see in some locations sort of wooden bollards installed at the edge of the footpath by the curb that prevent vehicles from parking on the footpath. It doesn't stop people from parking, it just stops them from parking on the footpath. So I would be inclined to add that as a condition in order to for the reason of safeguarding continued access to the site during the period of the compound being in operation.
Yeah. If I might come in on that bit, I think I agree with what you're saying. I think if that, my only thought is whether that condition slightly, take some advice from officers, but whether that condition is slightly broader, because they could have temporary traffic management restrictions outside of Empland. Currently, they've just coned off certain areas, isn't it, as a very temporary measure that they would apply for separately under their construction management plan. But they'd have to specify to the council that they were going to make those applications, because they're outside of planning, aren't they? But we could go, but by the construction management plan, they'd be specifying that they'd do that. It's an odd one because they've already got a construction management plan for their previous application. So this is a kind of plan on top of a plan, isn't it? But yes, that's the control. But I think that's the broad intention, is to condition being able to retain access so that it's usable, isn't it? And just how we get to it. Does anyone have any other thoughts that they want to put forward at this time? I can't see any. Well, Gareth has helpfully just put forward the fact that you don't want that one.
No,
okay.
no.
We won't do that. Right, okay, sorry. Well, yeah, we'll pick that one up later. In terms of my, I guess, from my feelings on this one, is that I fully get why residents are concerned, because they've had issues previously. I'm comfortable that these are good conditions in terms of the ceasing within 12 months and of the protections for wildlife and the tree protection fencing, that there's good protections in there. So permitting we pick up some of these other concerns, as mentioned by Councillor Fenton, then I'd be happy to support it. But that's just putting my 2 pence in. I don't think I'd be comfortable with deferring, because essentially at the moment we're choosing whether or not we agree with it as it stands. And we wouldn't be choosing whether or not we agree with something that might or might not happen in the future, because we know nothing about this other piece of land, or whether they'd be able to afford it or anything else. Councillor Belly.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think there's grounds to defer. I think that I agree with Councillor Fenton. I'm happy to approve this because the application still leaves the majority of the space as open amenity space, but it isn't if you can't get to it. I think the tactile paving drop curb itself can be protected through enforcement, but the turning space around it and the access on the pavement, it looks like it can't be currently as the application stands. But I don't think that's grounds to defer it. I'd be happy to approve it subject to some sort of condition, maybe leaving it to chair and vice chair and officers to come up with the exact wording, if we agree the principle of approval subject to access being maintained for the rest of the site. Yes, and in terms of other sites maybe being more suitable, I think approving this doesn't prevent the applicant from looking for other sites that are more suitable. I think even if there was another site that was more suitable than this one, that wouldn't be grounds to refuse this application. So yeah, we can always, if we feel that looking at this application, this one we have in front of us, and we feel that this is that we can approve it subject to access, then we can always ask the applicant to look and see if other sites are more suitable and apply to use them as well, or instead.
Thank you. Councillor Fenton, please.
Thank you. I mean, just to come back on the the issue around ensuring access to the site. I'm not kind of wedded to wooden bollards, that's one option, and I'm happy for a recommendation to be around for chair and vice chair to consult with officers about what could be conditioned that would deliver the outcomes that I think we want to see, which is that people can have unfettered access to the site via a pavement without having to squeeze between a fence and a parked car. That's ultimately what I think the outcome that we want to achieve. Yeah.
Thank you. I can't see any other comments at this time. I think if we can just agree broadly what those added conditions are, Gareth, so we're looking at how we ensure that there's unfettered access to there. But for the details of exactly how that's worded to come forward, have you got any proposals for what that might look like at this time?
Well, I think you're looking at the submission of a scheme of measures to prevent car parking on the pavement, preventing the use of the pavement and the use of that access. That I think that may just lead to a temporary TRO to prevent parking full stop, because I can't see that. I don't think it'd be reasonable in planning terms to require permanent physical measures for what is a relatively short-term use of that site. The number of, if it is bollards, for example, the number of bollards you'd have to put in there probably quite considerable. But yeah, we'll leave it up to them, the condition, I guess. We can supplement it with an informative. Councillor Fenton, you mentioned the concern about the issue being displacement of car parking elsewhere. So we could. I don't think we could specify what said. Wouldn't specify what measures you thought were necessary. But if it was an issue of trying to specify something that didn't then displace parking elsewhere, then we could cover that in an informative.
Councillor Fenton.
Not quite sure I understand what a new condition or informative would say. I mean, I think what we're saying is that the applicant would be asked to submit to the planning authority for approval a scheme of measures. We're not specifying what they would be, designed to ensure continued access to the site for pedestrians. Pedestrians and those with buggies, those in wheelchairs, using wheelchairs. I think that's what we're saying, and we're not.
Yeah.
I think your point about not specifying what that intervention might be. I think we're saying that we're asking that it be conditioned that the applicant sets out for the planning authority how they intend to secure that outcome.
Okay. I think I'm perhaps over-interpreting your comments before in terms of the issue about potential displacement of parking from there causing issues elsewhere, but that's
no, it's yeah. So I think what I'm saying at least is I'm not seeking to remove the parking that currently exists at that point, but to ensure that the parking is such that it doesn't prevent people from accessing the site via the secondary, what will become temporarily the primary gate.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Are we all, with that being the purpose of the condition, we all happy to support that being added to the recommendation? Councillor Melly, yeah.
I'm just wondering if we need an informative to remind the applicant of the vehicle crossing policy. Is that what it's called? That's what it's called. Vehicle crossing policy, which is for things like driveways and drop curbs and vehicle access across a pavement.
I don't think they're proposing to do. Yeah, they're not proposing to do any changes. They're just across the pavement using that
Yeah, but we have a
speed table.
vehicle crossing policy which sets out the rules you have to abide by if you're going to drive vehicles across a pavement. Which are outside of planning policy, it's
Yeah,
highways, but that's why I was wondering whether they're informative.
Just inform. Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, they are using it as a primary access, so I think it's pretty reasonable to just pop that on there.
I think in the past, when we've had planning applications to expand a driveway or add a driveway and that sort of thing, we've added informative about, you know, just referring to that policy.
Yeah. Fine. Okay. I'm not seeing any bands. I think I'm fine. Yeah, could you take us through so we need a proposer and a seconder formally. Yes, can we have a formal proposer? Yeah, Councillor Fenton, another formal seconder. Yeah, thank you. Yes, so Gareth, can you take us through the officer recommendation with the added conditions for us to vote on, please?
so the recommendation is to approve planning permission for a temporary period, subject to the conditions on page 14 and 15 of the agenda report, as amended and supplemented by the officer update in front of them at the moment, and then with the additional condition regarding measures to prevent or to provide for continued access to the second site access for pedestrians, buggies, etc. And then an informative regarding the council's vehicle crossing policy.
Thank you. Okay. Can I therefore see hands for the officer recommendation, please, with the additions, and those who are against, and those who abstain. Okay, so that application is approved with the additional conditions. We will take a short pause there to go and collect Councillor Vassy, but also if you would like to leave at this time, anyone who's joined from the public, then now's the best time to do it. Thank you. We'll come back at just before quarter past. Very long break. do. So we'll move on to item 4B, which is the View Cinema on Stirling Road. Gareth, you can take us through the presentation for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a planning application for this construction of 5 paddle courts and associated facilities in the View Cinema car park, Clifton Moor. The site as it. I like my laser pointer. There you go. So the site is the far end of the car park away from the cinema itself. Proposal involves the loss of about 93 parking spaces. The block plan. So these are the paddle courts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Some new wider disabled persons parking spaces. An area for cycle parking. And then this is an area, so changing facilities, bin store. There's a shop and a store, reception area, cafe, servery, and these are laid out outdoor tables. And there's some new planters delineating the site to the east. It's the entrance. These are the elevations, a bit difficult to pick up. So those facilities are largely in wooden or green clad shipping containers. You can see 6 meter high floodlight columns, and they're 4 for each court. And then the fencing around is between 3 and 4 meters in height. Let's go back to, so 4 meters around the end of the court, just wrapping round like that, 3 meters at the and on the sides of the court. I mentioned the parking. So it's a loss of about 93 spaces. The report mentions 270 spaces on the site, but this is in this area here over the site as a whole, including the car parking, which I believe is shared, but even the areas in front of these small restaurant units, there's about 550 plus spaces on the site as a whole. There is a very short update. We've undertaken an additional neighbour notification, so I'm seeking to change the recommendation to delegated authority to officers to approve following the expiry of the publicity period. Obviously, if we get any comments, relevant comments from the from that additional neighbour notification, then we'll take that to the chair and vice chair, and the decision will be made whether it comes back to committee or whether it hasn't raised any issues that haven't been taken up at the meeting or in the report as it stands.
Thank you. We don't have any public participation, so I'm happy to take any questions at this point rather than splitting them out into 2 sections. Does anyone have any questions for officers? Councillor Bassey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm looking at that photograph and it doesn't resemble what I've ever seen there. That area of parking being completely empty. Every single time I've been there, there's cars parked everywhere. So I'm just wanting to make sure, just have a clarification about when this picture was taken, and also clarification from you, please, about what exactly is the area that is being proposed for this. Is it the whole of that car park next to the cinema, or is it a part of it? What exactly are we talking about?
So the first part of the question, no idea when this photograph was taken. Google doesn't mark the satellite images in the same way as it does, as far as I'm aware, the same way as it does its street view. So I don't know, although given the number of cars that are parked, it doesn't look like it was during any of the COVID lockdown periods. The parking. So reference that build out there. That's that bit. So it's this area here. So in that square, in that rectangle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Melly, please.
Actually, Chair, I think that might have answered my question because I was trying to like reconcile the site location plan with the block plan. So what you showed us with the block plan, is that the whole of the application site, or does the application site include the rest of the car park as well?
The applications, because it has to show access to the public highway, or because they have shown access to the public highway, that's why it's set out covering that whole area and the plan shown on page 29. But the area which is where the development is to be constructed, just in that section there.
So is the car park adjoining it, like between the application site and the cinema, in
This
the
bit.
control of the applicant as well? In terms of conditions about EV charging and disabled parking bays and stuff, is that in the control of the applicant, even though it isn't in the? block
No,
plan?
it's the whole site is owned by I assume a pension fund or some such organisation. So they would be, I guess, taking a lease on that part of the site.
So are the conditions around things like EV charging and disabled parking enforceable if that
Well,
land isn't in the control of the applicant?
That is in the application
It
site,
is,
so
okay,
they would
right.
have to,
Okay,
you know, they would have to negotiate with that, with the landlord to be able to do that. But
okay,
it's within it's within the extent of the application site.
okay, thanks.
Councillor O'Rourke, please.
Condition 3 talks about the strategy for EV charging. Is there a time limit as to when they have to complete the EV charging system?
I hope so.
I think, Chair, if I may assist, Gareth, I think
Yeah.
condition 3 says,
Go ahead.
shall be implemented in accordance with approved details prior to first use.
Does it not say the strategy should be?
I think it says the strategy has to be submitted and
Before
approved prior
use.
to commencement.
Mhm.
And then it has to be implemented, the approved strategy then has to be implemented prior to first use.
Okay.
That's my understanding
Yeah.
of the condition.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Before the first.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Melly, please.
Thanks, Chair. Paragraph 5.7 says that that details show the provision of 5 wider disabled parking spaces. I was just wondering if they're longer as well as wider, and if any of them will be have EV charging.
They're on the drawing there, so they have the area set out delineated behind the. So they have the area set out delineated behind the side of the space. Whether they will be part of whether there'll be an EV charger, that will be set out in the strategy. Yes. Members wish to emphasise that they should be, then maybe the point to change the condition.
Can't see any of hands for questions, so we'll move straight through to discussion. If anyone would like to start us off at this time in terms of discussion on the application, I'm happy to take proposals if you're at that stage really. Councillor Fenton.
I think it's a good application. I understand it's an emerging leisure activity. Never played it myself. And seems a very good use for what is, whenever I've been up to Clifton Moor, a very sad and empty bit of car park. So no, it seems a good development in a good place. So yeah, happy to support it.
Councillor Waters, please.
Quite happy to second that and pleased to see condition 4. And it's people taking an interest in actually turning intrusive lighting off at 11 o'clock. So I know we've sat here before over many years on different things, arguing similar points.
Yeah. I'm not seeing anyone else. I mean, I just want to join and say same comments as yourselves, really, that I think it's a really positive application, and it's a humongous amount of parking that however many images I've looked back through, I can't find anywhere it's being used intensively. So I'm very happy to support this. We've now got a proposer and a seconder. We'd like a formal proposer. Yeah, I'm happy to formally propose, and we'll take Councillor Waters seconding. Oh, sorry, got your hand up for question.
Yeah, 2 things. I'd like to suggest that at least one of the disabled parking bays should have electric vehicle charging, or that one of the, proposed electric vehicle charging spaces be large enough for access. And then I also just wanted to clarify exactly what the recommendation is. Because it says delegated authority to officers to approve following the expiry of the publicity period. It doesn't say anything about taking further comments into account that I received during that publicity period.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. I didn't mean to ask this myself as well. So because the main person that we are consulting with is the cinema, or people in the area, if they come back and they say, actually, we desperately want this, which is unlikely from your conversation, my understanding. But if they were to come back, what would be the position?
Well, we are legally required to consider any representation made as part of our publicity of planning applications, which is probably why it doesn't appear in the in that recommendation. But yeah, so if we received any comments, what I would say is that there have been site notices put up here, so we're not complying with the law, but our normal policy is to send out letters, and there is one. The cinema didn't receive a direct notification themselves, so that's who we've sent that letter to. Yeah, if we received any comments, then we would raise them with the chair and vice chair, and make the decision as to whether they raised any point that was sufficient or different enough to warrant it to come back to committee.
So the recommendation is to delegate authority to officers to approve following the expiry of the publicity period if no further representations are received. Effectively.
Yes. Well, no, because you also then, if you then need to put some wording in to cover the chair and vice chair intervention bit.
Gareth, might it be something along the lines of subject to consideration with the chair and vice chair of any comments?
Yeah.
Received, something like that.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. We're all happy to support that change. Yeah. That is a good point though about the disabled parking bays. That's something that we say. Is that just a tweak to the condition? We don't have a policy that specifies, or does it specify which one should be used for disabled? How many should be used for disabled parking from an EV?
It would be in the council's low emissions strategy, and I'm afraid I couldn't make a stab at whether it does or not. I'm sure it does, but I couldn't say what the proportions were.
Councillor Bassey.
Just a quick point of information for my benefit, Chair. reference is made here to EV charging facilities, and we've had a number of these. Could officers just quickly explain what the regulation is on this? What percentage of parking spaces on these kinds of applications now have to be EV?
If you don't have the answer to
I don't have the answer to
I
hand.
would propose that, I know there is a policy document because I've read it before, so we can circulate that after the meeting so people can see it.
I asked, Chair, simply because there were 2 applications last week where I think one was calling for 2% and then someone was volunteering 15%. And I'm mindful of the fact that 18% of all cars sold now are electric vehicles. And I mean, in a sense, it's down to the applicant. If they get planning permission, they don't have enough spaces for EV charging, that's their problem. But I'm sure we have guidance that we can help them
Yeah.
with. So if it could be circulated after the meeting, it'd be good to know.
2% in terms of communal car parking spaces sounds correct.
Yeah.
And now you've given me that prompt. And then the building regulations require, if you have a house with your own drive, you provide that there's a charging point provided. In this case, because there's already a massive car park with no EV charging, this is a bit of betterment linked to this use because they're not actually providing any additional car parking spaces. They're reducing the amount of car parking spaces. So I think that's why it doesn't specify a particular number. Just do it through negotiation.
Okay, I'm just mindful that 3% of all cars in the UK are now electric, so hopefully our advice will be responding and further encouraging that, but that's fine, thank you.
Did you want to formally look at amending the condition, or are you happy in terms of the EV charging and disability element? Or
I'd like to, but I don't think anyone's seconded it or anything, so.
we do just be a tweak to the wording on there, is that right? Yeah. I think, is everyone supportive of that? I think it's a sensible recommendation. That essentially we're proposing that at least one of the EV charging bays will also be one of the disability access ones. Looks like it'll be supportive. Okay, we'll take that one forwards. As we've had several changes, I will need a proposer for this with the slight tweaks that we've got around conditions and the wording of the form of approval. Now, if I could see somebody to propose that. Councillor Fenton, and seconded by Councillor Melly. Thank you. Okay, Gareth, with those changes, could you take us through the recommendation, please?
Sure. So the revised recommendation is that delegated authorities or officers to approve following the expiry of the publicity period. That's subject to consideration of any additional comments received with the chair and the vice chair, and then subject to conditions as set out on page 26 with that amendment to condition 3 in respect of the location of the electric vehicle charging point and the disabled parking spaces.
Thank you. Okay, so taking that recommendation, can I see those who are for approving the recommendation? Yeah, so that is unanimous. So that application is approved. Does anyone feel like they need a break, or should we move on swiftly? Seem fine. Okay, we will move on to the next application then, which is we'll be taking these. So the next 2 applications. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you. So we're going to take the next 2 applications together in terms of presentations, because it's items 4C and 4D both relate to Club Salvation at 31 George Hudson Street. But the second one is the listed building consent. So there'll be 2 votes, but we'll take the presentations together and the speakers. Gary, if you could take us through the presentation first, and then we've got 1 speaker for this item. Oh, no speakers, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to proposals at Club Salvation and 3 adjacent listed buildings at 27, 29 and 31 George Hudson Street. So the proposals seek conversion of the upper floors to 17 serviced apartments and the ground floor of 31 George Hudson Street to amenity areas for the serviced apartments. Quite a lengthy presentation, as you will have seen in the agenda package. So the site outlined in red, it's within the Central Historic Core Conservation Area. I just outline it with the pointer. It's just that indent into the car park. And this site here, so 27, 29, 31 George Hudson Street. A former hotel at 23 Tanner Row, and then this is number 25 Tanner Row. The club use at the moment incorporates both those buildings and the ground floor of 31. And then just a different view showing the light well and the site bounded by the NCP car park. Photographs of the site. So you see the Tanner Row buildings here. The car park elevation. Fuel on George Hudson Street, so 27, 29, 31 George Hudson Street, those 3 grade 2 listed buildings. From the opposite side of Tanner Row. And then from Roosevelt Street. And then this is a photograph into the light well. This is, it is or was their smoking area at one point, but now appears to have been almost entirely enclosed. So existing basement. The existing ground floor, so the shop units in 27 and 29, and the entrance into Club Salvation at number 31. Club area on the rest of the ground floor. First floor, you see the listed buildings are in residential use or were in residential use. First floor is part of the operational area of the club. And then the existing second floor, third floor, which is the roof of the listed buildings. And then the top floor of 25 Tanner Row. Roof story. Existing elevations, there's the George Hudson Street elevation, the Tanner Row elevation. Existing rear elevations within that light well area that I showed the photograph of. Sections. And then the proposed basement. So I mentioned that the basement became, if number 31 became amenity area for the apartments. So that's in terms of refuse, storage, back of house, that sort of thing. And then the retained nightclub in the bar and bar storage in the Tanner Row buildings. Ground floor, the extent of the nightclub. The entrance to the apartments and the retained retail at ground floor. Then at first floor, you start to see the conversion into these short-term let apartments within use class C1, which is important to remember that they're not permanent for permanent residential. First floor, second floor, third floor, which in this area is the new build, and the fourth floor, and then accommodation within the new roof above number 23. So the elevations show that additional roof story, the additional shear story, and then a roof story above that. So that's a new element of the construction. Rear elevations. It's a bit easier to pick out because the and then the courtyard elevation. So this is an apartment which replaces that that enclosed area in the courtyard, the green metal enclosed one that I showed on the photograph. Sections through the building. So this is the new construction. It's a particularly pertinent to the list of building consent. So this is the ground floor of number 31. So at the moment, it's got the club entrance and this cloakroom. So that's removed. And then there's an element of subdivision with the refuse store to the rear. First floor, largely new kitchens and bathrooms, rather than any significant alteration to the list of buildings. Similarly, at second floor level, areas of new work, I assume, to get the plumbing in for the shower behind the to be hidden. And third floor in the roof, again, there's some new partitioning to create a new shower room and then fire separation requirements. And that's it. There is an update in front of you. We've got an updated consultation response from Public Protection. So originally they had made their comments on the basis of the flats being C3, so potentially permanent occupation. It's been pointed out that the application is on the basis of them being within the C1 use class, which is more of a hotel type use. So short-term letting, and there is a condition requiring that on page, condition 12 requires that on page 49. And on that basis, they've said that there wouldn't be a requirement to require work regarding any air quality management issues. And so that has led to the deletion of condition 5, which is about air quality measures. And then condition 2 was just an additional drawing added to the list regarding remember I showed you the new apartment within the Lightwell. Just listed that drawing, so it hadn't been picked up. So yeah, just to point out, it's in the report, but planning permission was granted for a similar scheme 2019, and that permission is now expired. And the main difference between that one and this one is the retention of the nightclub use on the ground and basement floor. The 2019 proposal was for an A3 restaurant type use. And that's the end of the presentation and the update.
Right, thank you. We don't have a speaker on this one again, so I'm open floor for any questions that you might have for officers at this time. Councillor Melly, and I'll come Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, go.
The refuse store that you showed on the plans, is there like an additional refuse store and delivery access, like in addition to what's there now for the club? Is this a new one for the apart hotel? And I was just wondering where it is.
So the club has a refuse store at ground floor level, and then this is the refuse store for the apartments. And then,
So would it be so it would be collected from a different street from where refuse is currently collected?
possibly, there is a condition though, requiring them to, I think we probably try and get them to pick up on Tanner Road. There is a condition for a management plan. Condition 13 on page 49, which seeks to approve a management plan regarding the management of refuse and recycling facilities and deliveries and collections. So, I mean, at the moment, they do deliver from George Hudson Street and from Tanner Row. So there is already an element of disruption on Tanner Row, on George Hudson Street. I think the vaults in the pavement are on that side rather than Tanner Row side.
Councillor Baxter, please, and I'll come to.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wondered if there was a requirement for clubs to have a smoking area, because if current one's being replaced by an apartment, I just think naturally people are going to end up spilling out onto the street and sort of on there, and it's obviously a really busy road. So I just wondered what's been put in place to sort of account for
that. Because by the license, there's no requirement. There's no requirement for them to provide an on-site smoking area, and given that smoking area, or was once a smoking area, appears to be entirely enclosed, I wonder if it operates as a smoking area at the moment. They would, as part of the changes they're going to have to make to the license, because they're changing the licensable area, that'll be covered. The licensing manager says they will have to put in, if smoking takes place on the pavement, they'll have to put in some sort of management plan to make sure it doesn't obstruct the pavement or occur in an area where someone's going to step off the pavement into the traffic. So, but that would be a licensing requirement.
Councillor Fallon, please.
Thank you. Just picking up the issue of what used to be the smoking area in the light well being turned into an apartment. Would the nightclub still have a small outdoor area where I could see all the air conditioning units were lined up? Would there still be an outdoor area for club customers in what's currently the light well, in which case they would be presumably outside the windows of the new apartments, or would there be no outside area?
There'd be no outside area.
Thanks.
So that, so the ground floor is as it is at the moment, entirely built up, apart from these small areas to the back of the 27 and 29, 27 and 29, which aren't in occupation by the club at the moment. And then at first floor, this open area is accessed from the apartments.
Councillor Bassey, please.
Thank you, Chair. You have a couple of questions. In the plans you've shown us, if I've understood correctly, the existing and proposed layouts for the first, second and third floors show flats and bedrooms there now. Is that, did I understand that correctly? So it's a change of layout and a change of the types of bedrooms, but the rooms are already occupied and used as bedrooms.
Only above 27, 29 and 31. So they are 3-story. They're 3-story buildings, and the upper floors are residential use, single occupancy, not single occupancy, a single unit above each one. But the upper floors of the Tanner Row Club building, they're not in residential use. So this would be, there'll be new uses above the club and change of use above the 27 to 31 George Hudson Street. But the upper floors of the whole site.
Right,
become
so
serviced
people above
apartments.
27, 29, 25, whatever, they're currently occupied by people who are living there. Is that correct?
I don't know if they're currently occupied. They have been
They have
occupied.
been occupied.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. And again, so I understand what's being proposed. One of the considerations that might come into mind is the entrance for people accessing the areas where there currently are no flats. I'm not sure in my own mind properly how those accessing the nightclub and those accessing the flats are separated. And I'm asking because I can see busy nights where people are very merry on the outside of the club may be intimidating to some people who are coming to stay in the apartments or flats or rooms above the club. And it's how those two groups of people are being separated. Could you clarify what's proposed?
So as it stands, 31, I believe is the main entrance. And if you recall, on George Hudson Street, there's pedestrian barrier across the front there, presumably to manage people milling around the entrance. And then the flats above 27, 29 and 31 have their own access, which I've just pointed out there. And then the proposal, get there, is those access points will stay. But then the entrance to the club is on, it's either on the corner there or, yes, it's on the corner. So the club entrance moves away from the residential entrance. And then the residential for the new flats is in this location here. So there is some separation there.
Yeah, so I properly understood what the report says. So I properly understand what the reporter said. The idea is that these would be rooms that visitors to the city could stay in as part of a vacation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we can potentially imagine that families with young children or older people or whatever might be accessing these new properties by those entrances.
Yes.
A whole range of different people might be.
Yes.
visiting.
They
Yeah.
might want to check TripAdvisor before they do, but
Yeah.
yes, that is potentially the case.
Okay, good, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I'd understood all of it.
Councillor Melling, I'll come to you.
So how many homes would be lost to become holiday lets? Okay, thanks. I have a question about the listed building consent. The report says it's for internal alterations. So does it not include the part of the building that's having an extra story added?
No, because the listed building is comprises those three buildings. 27, 29, 31 George Hudson Street, and the upward extension is to number 23 Tanner Row, which, yes, not listed.
Councillor Hollier, please.
That's true. Presumably on the existing one, you go in, you get your hand stamped, you pay your money or whatever, you sort of go through and there's a sort of section that's delineated for doing that.
Yes,
But I mean,
interesting. You're talking to someone who knows.
I've been there fairly recently, but I can't remember how I got in. But the new one, it just seems like you go straight in and there's no kind of little bit where there's a little desk and somebody does all that. Is
Well, yes, that is true, but that I think that may well be a detail that will be added later, but not something we felt we needed to.
okay, but the
insist
building
on.
things wouldn't affect any, the listed building bit is just the other parts, adding rooms and things which you presumably need, wouldn't affect any of that, or that's just.
Yeah, any lobbying, any lobby which might be requested as part or required as part of the license, for example, or they may find that they need it because of noise breakout when they come to do the works required of the condition in terms of noise. That could, yeah, that wouldn't affect the listed building, so we wouldn't be too concerned about that in terms of the internals of the building.
Okay.
Thanks. Not seeing any other questions. I don't have any more for this, but I'll ask people to go for discussion. If anyone has anything they'd like to start with on the application. Councillor Fenton. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I think I was on the committee when the previous application came from memory. I think it's a good thing that this application does retain some of the nightclub space. Obviously, live music venues and cultural venues are important, and it would be for all people of all ages. And it would be sad if this one was lost. So it's good to see it partially retained, and reading the report, hopefully this scaled down club will be sustainable going forward in terms of as part of a mixed development. So I can see no reason not to support the offer of the recommendation.
Yeah, Councillor Melly, please.
Yeah, we've had quite a few applications to this committee where there's a reduced kind of cultural venue or community amenity, and it doesn't look like it's going to stay viable, and it kind of looks like they're deliberately designing it to not be viable so it closes in the future. But I think I'm reassured that it's the opposite in this case. This preserves the feasibility or enhances the feasibility of an existing cultural space. I don't like the loss of homes to be turned into holiday lets. That concerns me. But I don't think that's enough of a reason to refuse. I think it's outweighed by other benefits of the scheme. So I'm happy to approve as well.
Councillor Vassie.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a little concerned because I share the opinions of previous two speakers on this. We do need cultural venues. We need them to succeed. We need them to thrive as part of a vibrant city. I'm still waiting to be persuaded that we're not going to create conflict for people wanting to who are just coming to the city. If you buy a flat above a place like this, you know what you're doing, you feel comfortable, you live with it. If you just arrive in the city and you've booked a weekend and you suddenly find yourself on a Friday or Saturday night feeling quite nervous about accessing or exiting because there's a crowd of people who are all quite merry. I'm still a little worried as to the impact that would have, not simply on TripAdvisor, but on the time that people have when they come here, the people in the nightclub, the viability of the nightclub going forwards, because then people will say, the nightclub should close, this is disgusting, why do we have to have all this noise? I'm still waiting to be persuaded that the separation of those two activities is going to be sufficient to not end up with a family with two little kids trying to, going to the theatre or whatever it is, going for a walk along the river and coming back and suddenly finding themselves surrounded by a whole load of people who are shouting and merry and feeling they have to push their way through it to get to their accommodation. So I'm happy for people to persuade me otherwise. I'm just a little anxious about the impact.
Yeah, Councillor Baxter, and I'll come to Councillor.
I've just looked up the opening time. So it's only open Wednesday, Friday and Saturday. And the earliest is on a Wednesday when it opens at 10 o'clock. So presumably if you have young kids, you'd probably be back in the apartment by that time anyway. And on Friday and Saturday, it's 10:30 as well. So you'd think that you'd be back sort of in the flat and wouldn't encounter people having a good time.
Susan, did you want to, did you have your hand up before? Sorry, was it the same?
Yeah, it's to say the same thing.
Okay.
It's a club, not a bar. So
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be that conflict personally.
Yeah.
I was also going to say there clearly is demand for this sort of holiday let. In my ward, we've got a real problem of family homes in residential areas being turned into holiday lets and causing all sorts of problems in those residential areas. And so I think the city centre is a more suitable location for them. And I think less likely to cause these sorts of conflicts than if it was maintained as the homes that it currently is.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'll pretty much support the comments that have been made by Councillor Fenton and Councillor Melly in that it's positive to see a venue of this type being kind of surviving in the new application and being supported where it was previously being lost for a different use type. And I think that's a really positive outcome of what the planning policy team at council's done and the local ward councillors in terms of liaising with them. So I think that's really good. And I'm comfortable that the conditions around noise attenuation, that kind of thing, to protect residents will improve the situation. I remember first finding out that there's houses that back onto that smoking area about 5 years ago and being shocked that that was a situation, and I don't think that they're great. So actually having those modernised and putting in protection that will mean that those houses operate in a way that's livable is probably a positive output. And I agree with Councillor Melly's point that we should be looking at purpose-built accommodation of this type in the right places when it comes to holiday lets, rather than pushing them out on the existing communities, isn't it? Which is the issue that we have all the time. So I'd be happy to support it as it currently stands. Councillor Fenton.
I suppose just to respond to Councillor Vassey's point, I think wherever you walk through the city centre, whether you be walking to the Grand, which is just around the corner from here, you would encounter people outside Club Salvation or Salt and Pepper or other venues locally. So I don't think this would be somehow introducing something new. Yes, there would be new accommodation above, but there is already a lot of accommodation, either hotel holiday let accommodation nearby, so I don't think it would sort of create a problem that doesn't already, or an issue that doesn't already exist elsewhere. There's a whole separate debate about how you sort of manage the conflicting demands of different uses of the city centre, but that's probably not one for this for this application on its own.
Councillor Bassey.
Yeah, I'm listening to what everyone's saying. I suppose part of my response is that I was in the city centre on Saturday night and saw a lot of activity and a lot of police running around. I'm hugely supportive of there being venues where there's music, especially if it's live music, having earned my living from it for 30 years. But yes, I'm listening to what you're saying. So thank you for the comments that have been made.
So, I'm not seeing any other hands. Is anyone like to? I think we should move to test the vote. Would anyone like to formally propose the recommendation, Councillor Baxter? And can anyone second that as well, please, Councillor Hollier? We don't have any changes on this one, which will be pleased. So, could you take us through the AFS recommendation, please?
Thank you, Chair. So for the excuse me, for the full application.
Sally, this is correct. Yeah, we'll be taking item 4C first, and then we'll have a second vote for item 4D.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Yeah.
That's what I was gearing up to do. So, item 4C, page 45. Recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions set out in the report on page 45 onwards, as amended by the update, which is an additional drawing in condition 2, and then the deletion of condition 5.
Okay, thank you. In that case, can I see hands for those who are for? We've done that. Yeah, Baxter and Holly. So, hands who are there for the recommendation. That is unanimous, so that application is approved. I will need to seek a, unless someone has anything they'd like to add for discussion specifically on 4D, then I'll ask. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chair, only that the consultation response from the Design Conservation and Sustainable Development Conservation Officer says that they request the same conditions as previously advised. I wasn't sure if that was the same as advised on the other application or the same as advised on the previous application 5 years ago, in which case it's, because it doesn't say what conditions are advised, it's difficult for us to take their advice when we can't see it.
Right,
You know, we rely on the advice of officers of what conditions to apply, and we can't check that they have been applied.
Yes, it was the latter, and the conditions on page 84 are the same as
Okay.
as were imposed on the 2019 permission.
Thanks. Any other questions on this one before we move forward? Okay, I'm seeking someone to propose move this recommendation, Councillor Hollier, and someone to second. Councillor Baxter, please. So can you take us through the recommendation, please?
So the recommendation, item 4D, is to approve. It's in line with the conditions on page 84 of the agenda report with no amendments.
Thanks. Again, I'll ask to see those who are for moving this recommendation. And again, that is unanimous, so that is approved, and that's passed. There is one more item to move through, which is item 5, which is the planning appeal performance and decisions report. Do you want to give a quick? How could you forget such an important? Could you take us through this, please?
So this is our roughly quarterly appeal performance update for members. It shows the appeals performance of the quarter. Yeah, sorry, there's a mistake in there. Table 1, that should read 01/01/23 to the 31st of March, 24. So that I've not updated the table there. Apologies for that. So this is the 1st of January to the 31st of March 2024. We had 11 appeals decided, 3 allowed, 8 dismissed. So that's 27%, which is roughly similar to the planning inspectorate figures for England as a whole. It's a very short period of time to take to turn into any meaningful statistics, but there we are. 2 appeals for major development, 1 allowed and 1 dismissed, that's set out on page 90. And then the 12 months appeal performance. So appeals allowed is 34%, which is higher than the 29% of appeals allowed in England as a whole. Then we have page 93, the list of appeals, page 93, 94, the list of the 11 appeals, and then some summaries. And then on page 103, the outstanding appeals. There was one of the summaries was missing, and that's included on the written update. That's a decision relating to the Dick Turpin Public House in Woodthorpe, and an enclosed outside drinking area. But I'm happy to take any questions if members have any.
Councillor Orwell, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Wilberforce Trust one on page 90. Has there been a subsequent application following the appeal dismissal? I can't remember seeing one.
No, nor can I. I can't remember seeing one either. I'll come back to you on that. I can look it up.
And secondly, the site is now a mess and untidy on the main street in Huntington. What can we do to make the site tidy?
Well, we have enforcement powers.
I have reported it.
Untidy land.
Yeah, but I was told that it wasn't untidy. Well,
there is a bar that we have to cross. So if we've made that assessment, we can keep it under.
Yeah,
if people start fly tipping or something like that, then we can.
It's just overgrown. All the plants and material and shrubs are overgrown.
Yeah.
The site advertisement hasn't been taken down. It's now defaced, etc. It just makes the street scene look untidy.
Okay, I know that.
Councillor Belly.
Thank you, Chair. I had a question about the appeal that's on page 100 about 4 Government House Road. That was one that was refused at committee, I think, from memory. And the reasons for the appeal being dismissed are different reasons from the initial refusal. I was just wondering if you know anything about that.
Yes, I do. So this was an appeal. It wasn't the planning application. This was that was an appeal that was determined out before this period. So this was a second application for a certificate of lawfulness. So they came to us asking whether it was lawful to erect a permitted development height gate. And yes, so we refused that. on the basis of it being unlawful to close the highway, and that you couldn't read the permitted development, the general permitted development order as allowing that as sort of overriding that general principle. And the inspector determined that that was the wrong approach. And I think she said that the effect of the development would be to change the use of the land behind it, and the general permitted development order doesn't allow for that change of use. So she dismissed it on different grounds, which she's entitled to. They have to make the decision on the basis of, they don't say whether we're right and wrong. They make a new decision.
Thanks. Oh, so it's yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. So do you know if the stopping up order application has been decided yet, if that's been granted or refused? Or is that still pending?
Can be a stopping up order without a planning permission in place. So I assume that, I mean, that's dealt with by Department of Transport, and I assume it just falls away.
Yeah, because that was part of my confusion, because to get a stopping up order, it's usually needed in order to enact planning permission that has been granted.
Yeah.
But then one of the reasons for refusal was that there wasn't a stopping up order granted yet. But I think my confusion stemmed from the fact that it wasn't a planning application, it was a certificate of lawful use application. So
yes, I think the reference to stopping up order was like a point of information. I don't think we didn't refer to that in the refusal reason.
Okay.
Because yes, it would be an never-ending circle of chicken and egg, wouldn't it, if we'd done that? Yes, so it must just fall away.
Okay.
Councillor Vassey.
Thanks. Yes, I'm sorry that Councillor Waters isn't here, since there's an appeal dismissed on an HMO. And I just wanted to get a little clarification on it, just because the language of it is so obscure. So I was hoping you might explain it. There's a sentence here that says there was no evidence that increasing the level of occupancy would not further exacerbate these issues. It's kind of what page? I wish I could tell you. It's just, there's Appendix B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 5th one in Appendix B. But this idea that there's no evidence that increasing level of occupancy would not exacerbate issues. It's so convoluted, I find it impenetrable. And how can you prove a negative? How could you prove that something wasn't going to not do something? But so if you could just kind of help us understand what has happened in this appeal and whether it applies to other HMOs that may be winging their way here in the months ahead.
Only by saying every case is determined on its merits. Whilst we have regards to appeal decisions that have been made elsewhere, you always have to bear in mind that each case was going to be subtly or not so subtly different. So I think what's happened here is we demonstrated that there had been existing issues with the existing HMO, and so the inspector's saying there's no evidence that increasing the level of occupancy would not exacerbate the issues individually and cumulatively. But yes, it's a bit it's difficultly worded, isn't it?
So
this one was it's a particular issue with this one, because it was an HMO changing to a larger HMO, so going from a maximum of 6 to a 7. But then there was another HMO within the grounds of this large plot as well. So it was that cumulative impact, which probably doesn't exist in terms of a single plot in many locations, but normally the way we look at cumulative impacts is normally done on the basis of the thresholds, whereas in this case it was the sheer numbers on the site and the increasing occupancy on the site that we consider to be the issue. But obviously, because it's an existing HMO, the thresholds don't change.
Okay, so councillor Waters hasn't missed anything in particular here as an opportunity going forwards. It sounds like this is quite convoluted and not necessarily hugely applicable to anything else, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, I think it'd be reasonable to say it's an issue of the site and the fact there are the existing issues of the HMOs on the site as well, rather than an issue of introducing a new HMO into a street where we assess the thresholds and what have you.
Okay.
Just had one question. There's quite a few different whole range of dates in terms of when these went in for appeals, something quite a while back. Clearly some noticed it on appeals in my ward that take a long time to come through. What kind of timescales are we looking at on average for appeals now?
If you'd asked me that in advance, I could have looked it up. Because they do produce quarterly returns about how quickly they're operating. We do have a backlog, certainly in terms of certificates and enforcement appeals, which in some cases has gone on months without them necessarily being given to an inspector. The householder appeals tend to come back quite quickly. They were designed to be fast tracked, and I think they concentrate on, maybe not concentrate, but they do try and keep to that fast tracking. Anything that goes to a public inquiry has a timetable set out and is a quick dash to the inquiry, and then a long wait for the decision letter. So yeah, and I know they've been recruiting additional planning inspectors to try and cover that the issues they have in terms of the volumes. But as for percentages or distance, I can't tell you that.
Any other questions now on the report? No. In that case, there's no urgent business, so that's the end of the meeting. And thanks for everyone's time, as always.